Hey everyone, and welcome to a new video. You may have heard that shooting in RAW has advantages, so you give it a try, but when you open your RAW photo in your image processing software, it looks dull and lifeless. What's going on here? In this video, I'll explain why RAW photos need processing and what I use as my 10-step workflow to quickly get the very best out of my images. Don't forget to stay for my bonus tip, where I'll show you how to quickly go from this to this in one click. And no, it's not the automatic mode. My name is Simon d'Entremont and I make weekly videos giving you photo tips or taking you behind the scenes for wildlife and nature photography. Subscribe if you want to see more. First off, why do we need to process RAW photos? That's because the RAW is like your digital negative. It represents the information captured by your sensor, but with little to no processing done to it. Some people notice that the RAW photos look flat compared to what they saw on the back LCD of their camera. That's because the back LCD isn't showing you the RAW photo. That's a JPEG your camera made to display on the back LCD. Depending on your picture profile settings in your camera, it's also probably had adjustments made like saturation added, sharpening, and noise reduction. But these are not baked into the RAW file. So to get the RAW looking as good as your JPEG, they need some processing. RAW images also have more color depth and dynamic range, so they're a good choice. But that's not to say I'm a RAW snob. If you want a quick and easy workflow, cameras today can produce very nice JPEGs right out of camera, but RAWs will still yield you the ultimate in control and image quality. So here I'm going to show you my 10-step process to convert my RAW images to a JPEG while making it as pretty as it can be. I'm going to use Lightroom Classic, but many other programs can do the same, even if the name of the steps are different. Okay, let's start off with this photo of mine of a red-winged blackbird singing on a cold morning. In case you're thinking I'm not starting with a RAW image here, here's the video footage of the very same scene. It was a great morning. I've already imported the photo into Lightroom, so it has automatically taken care of the decoding of the RAW image so we can proceed with processing. Some programs may require you to do this decoding step first before processing. Make sure profile corrections are on. You'll find this in the lens correction section. This will auto-detect your lens and apply a correction to the natural darkening in the corners that lenses have, which we call vignetting. See, as I turn it on and off, the corners get lighter and darker. Once you turn it on, it should stay on and apply corrections automatically to new photos as you open them for processing. Okay, let's get on to my workflow. I say my workflow as there is no right or wrong here. The beauty of Lightroom is that it's non-destructive. That is, your original RAW photo is still in your computer, and Lightroom applies these as temporary tweaks, which you can go back and change at any time. To start processing your photo, go from the library mode, which is used to sort and select photos, to the develop module, which is used to process your photo. Step number 1 for me is cropping. This is because this tells me whether or not I have an artistic photo or not. If I can't find a nice crop that looks really good, I'll sometimes forego processing a photo because I can't find an artistic interpretation for it, which is the type of photo that I like. Click on the crop tool here, and now you can click on the corners to move the crop tool, or click on the image to move the image underneath the crop tool. There are preset aspect ratios if you want them as well. If your crop tool is stuck at one aspect ratio when you resize it, click on the little lock to unlock it, so then you can freehand the aspect ratio to what looks best for your photo. I tend to experiment a lot here. Vertical, horizontal, tight, or wide. Try to include nice accompaniments if they're in the photo to your subject. It would be a shame to crop this bird in tightly and lose all the beautiful golden highlights made by these sunlit cattails. Also, try not to crop your photo to include half of something, like half of this cattail. All in or all out is best. Double-click on the final crop when you're done. My next step is to adjust the exposure of the overall image. This is a step I like to keep on the simple side. Is your photo too bright or too dark? Plain and simple. Just take the exposure slider and move it up and down to see if your image improves or worsens, but try not to blow out your whites or crush your darks. In my case here, a wee bit darker looks good, as the highlights stand out more, as does the bird's breath against a darker background. The bird does get kind of dark, but we can fix that later. If you click on the little triangles in the upper left and right corners of the histogram, you'll enable alerts for over and under exposure, which will show as colors on your image if you go too far. My next adjustment is white balance. Since this is a video on processing a RAW photo, this is a good time to mention one of the most important reasons to shoot in RAW. You can adjust your white balance later in processing without penalty. That's right, play with it all you want. Now Lightroom does give you these profiles like cloudy and daylight, which you can either use in camera or adjust to taste after, but my own style is to shoot in auto white balance, which works for me 90% of the time. To manually but accurately pick the white balance in your photo, click on the dropper tool, then go to your photo and click on a white part of the photo. It will automatically set the white balance point for you. But every once in a while, I'll adjust the white balance for artistic effect. Move the temperature slider, right for warmer, more orange tones that add a great look in soft morning and evening light, or left for cooler tones, great for photos in the snow and in the cold. For this photo, moving left and bluer doesn't seem to improve the image, but warmer on the right really makes the highlights on the cattails glow a beautiful gold. That's what I want. Okay, now it's time for global and local adjustments in tone, lights, darks, shadows, and highlights. By global, I mean affecting the whole image, and by local, I mean affecting a chosen area. The difference between the two is that sometimes the whole photo needs to be adjusted, and sometimes it's best to adjust parts of the image differently as they have different adjustment needs. In this case, my bird is very dark and the breath is very light. Those may need different adjustments. I like to use shadows and highlights to make adjustments to bright and dark areas. I find these sliders more subtle than the white and dark sliders. Slide right and to the left to see what looks the best. In this case, I like the background in the shadow part of the histogram to be darker and make the breath stand out more. I like the highlights a bit brighter to make them pop. You can also make these adjustments using the tone curve and making a classic S curve with the shadows a bit lower and highlights a bit higher. This is manually what the contrast slider does. By the way, don't forget Control Z on the keyboard is the undo command. I use this a lot. It's Command Z on a Mac. If you try something and it doesn't work, hit Control Z to go back a step. Once you've made global adjustments, look at your photo and say, is there any part of this photo that needs different treatment from the rest? Especially really light or really dark areas. In this case, the bird is pretty dark, so I can select the bird with the Select Subject function and raising shadows a wee bit, just so it's not pure black. This is almost a silhouette shot, so pretty dark is still okay. Now it's on to the details and clarity in the presence section if applied globally. This is to add some punch to the image. I find the clarity slider very helpful in getting part of your image to pop, but it's very powerful, so use it gingerly, and I recommend to use it only on parts of the image, not globally. So here we can select our mask of the subject, and under Effects we can find Clarity. It adds a bit of contrast and a bit of sharpening, so add just a little to make your subject pop and become clearer in the photo. If you want a soft look to your subject, don't forget that you can subtract clarity, maybe to add a dreamier look to your misty waterfall shot. You're the boss here. By the way, if you want to learn how to take backlit shots like the one we're working on today, sign up to my email list and I'll give you a free guide on how to shoot in backlit situations. Or if wildlife is your thing, I've designed a wildlife photography course with over 5 hours of video content targeted specifically at people early to intermediate in their photography journey. Link to both of these in the show notes below. Now that we have our photo cropped and the right brightness and have the details like we want them, I turn my attention to colors. First off, RAW photos look a bit bland compared to their JPEG counterparts that often have saturation added. In this case, our original RAW looks a bit flat, and the easiest fix to this is to get more vibrant colors. Now Lightroom has two sliders, Vibrance and Saturation. What's the difference? Saturation increases the vividness of colors equally, meaning each color in the photo gets richer. Vibrance increases the vividness of the least vivid colors more, and less to more vivid colors. That means it has a more subtle touch, with less risk of one color going overboard, and for that reason, it's my favorite of the two. Raise it until you get the look you want, then maybe back off a bit. I often see this is where people get too heavy-handed. Subtle changes look more natural and complement the photo better in most scenarios. Now, if you want to get more inventive, you can start adjusting colors selectively. You decide if this fits your style of photography and art. It's no one's decision but yours. There's a color grading panel where you can adjust highlights, midtones, and shadows selectively by clicking and dragging the center point around. Or in the color mixer tab, you can pick a color you want and try to adjust it to your artistic vision. Let's say in this photo I'd like more color on the cattails, as the bright highlights have washed out some of the beautiful sunlit tones. I can click on Point Color and click on the dropper to select the color I want to adjust. Let's pick right here. Now I can add saturation to just that color and nowhere else. I can also add some luminance to make the specific color brighter. You can click on the little eye on the upper left-hand corner of any panel to show the before and after of that panel's adjustments. Here the before and after of that last change. By the way, it's good to check in once in a while to see your overall progress to date. Press Y on the keyboard for your before and after. Now it's time to start adding the finishing touches to the photo. Photo shot in low light may be noisy, so if it needs it, you can add noise reduction. In the detail panel, there's a luminance slider that you can use to apply noise reduction. There's also a more sophisticated denoising algorithm in Lightroom, which you can use by clicking here. Don't be too heavy-handed here, as you'll smooth off the details in your photo. Just apply enough to get the noise under control. A little noise is okay, especially as when zoomed back out, it's much less visible. The next step I like to make is sharpening. Raw photos often come out of camera lacking the tack sharpness we'd hoped for. One reason is that many cameras have anti-aliasing filters in front of the sensor to make sure you don't get moire, a strange artifact when lines make strange patterns. But these soften your photo. You slide the sharpening slider to get the desired effect. Sharp looking, but not crunchy. There's a little preview window in the detail panel to see what you're doing, but personally, I prefer to zoom into the face of my subject where I can see both the subject details and the background. I slide until the balance of the subject and background look right, preserving details and eliminating noise that's too problematic. My own workflow includes using Topaz Labs products for noise reduction and sharpening. I've been using them for a few years now and they work really well for me. I just click Photo, Edit In, and pick the Topaz software I want to use. When I'm done, it sends me back to Lightroom with the changes applied. The next and final step is to wait. That's right, wait 30 minutes. You may think this is nuts, but the best thing you can do right now is to go do something else for 30 minutes. You'd be surprised how many times you'll come back and say, what was I thinking? Too dark, too light, and too much saturation added are common boo-boos that you don't realize you've done while doing them. But after a short break, they jump right out at you. And here's the final step. While all your changes to date done in Lightroom are non-destructive, you need to bake these into the photo as a snapshot in time to lock them into your photo. This is called exporting in Lightroom. Exporting locks in your changes into a new photo. You can still go back to the original and tweak it some more, or keep going from where you were, or start all over again. But for now, we're going to lock our current state of affairs into a new photo. So I hit Export, select Hard Drive, pick a folder, name my file, and my image format is usually JPEG. I limit the file size to 5,000 kilobytes for most things other than printing. I resize to 2048 pixels on the long edge for Facebook and Instagram, as the resizing algorithms of those programs won't mess up my sharpening at this size. Sharpening for screen, standard. And I add a watermark, and I hit Export. Here we are, the finished product. Here's a before and after. And I promised you a bonus tip, a one-click solution. That's accomplished by saving your favorite settings as a preset. That's right, you can save your settings from one of your photos so that you can recall it at any time or use it on any other similar photo. You save these by first processing a photo to taste. Then click here on Add New Preset. Hit Create Preset and give it a name. I recommend that you deselect white balance. This varies greatly by scene, and what worked on one photo may not work on the other. I suggest to let what the camera auto-selected or what you selected as the default. So then you click here to save it. Then to recall it, just open a photo you want processed and look here on the left where your stored preset should be. Click on your named preset and voila, here's your processed photo in one click. If you thought this video deserving, give it a like and YouTube will show it to even more photographers wanting to get into raw image processing. And I hope you can use this the very next time you come home with images shot in RAW and make your very own masterpieces. I know you can do it.